So I'm going to speak to the elements of design, then the principles of design. You will pick the ones that apply towards your favorite building, and you'll do a PowerPoint that's only 3 or 4 slides long that talks about your building and what elements and principles of design apply to that building. You will then be presenting that PowerPoint to the whole class. So, and notice on my front page, you're going to have a title block with your name and introduction to architecture. So the elements of design, there are 4 basic elements of design: line, form, space, and pattern. So line can be vertical lines, horizontal lines, diagonal lines, or curves. Vertical lines stabilize resistance to gravity, and they give dignity and formality to a space. So I have your audio on if anybody wants to say it. Anybody know what building this is? You should.
Is that the design? I forgot the name of it.
I'm sorry. Say that again. Is that the what?
Is that the building that Thomas Jefferson? It was like his
Yep.
some building of his. I forgot the name.
Yep, it was in that movie that we watched, right? Anybody remember the name? Virginia State Capitol. So these buildings that I show you over and over again, I guarantee you will show up in the midterm and final. So this one was also, so this one has strong vertical lines, right? Those big pillars, and that's what a lot of the capitals look like because they're based on that. So this one also has strong vertical lines. Anybody know what building this one was? That was also in the film.
The Wainwright building?
Exactly. Do you know who the architect was?
Louis Sullivan?
Exactly. Yep. So strong vertical lines, and this is one where he has a base, all the pillars in the Capitol. So horizontal lines are relaxing and informal. So this was not in the film, but it's a very famous building not too far from Chicago. Anybody know what this building is or who would have designed it? It's got strong horizontal lines.
It looks familiar.
It's the Farnsworth House in Plano, Illinois by Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe came from Germany. He'd been head of the Bauhaus School of Design, and he came to start the School of Architecture at IIT. He did a lot of buildings in Chicago, and Mies was featured. The building, remember the building that was all clad in bronze? The high-rise building in New York City? That was the Mies van der Rohe building. So this building we saw in my presentation, again, it's got strong horizontal lines, and the brickwork emphasizes that horizontal. This is, actually, maybe I didn't have this in the presentation. This is the Hertley House in Oak Park, Illinois. I might have called the Beachy House the Hertley House. And so this one has this entrance here. Everything on the ground level is what you'd have in a basement space, and you enter, you turn sideways, you go upstairs, you turn around again to come into the space, and all the living spaces up here. But emphasizing the horizontal, that was what Wright was famous for in his prairie houses. You can have diagonal lines. They extend space. They're more active. They suggest movement. Okay, somebody's got to know what this building is.
That's the Hancock building.
Yep, John Hancock building. And this is, there was a famous engineer who did the Hancock building and the Sears Tower named Fazul Khan, and he worked for Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, and he's the one who devised the system that allowed them to go so tall. And so for many years, Chicago had the 2 tallest buildings in the world. That's the John Hancock, and so his diagonal lines extend your eye upward, right? So you can have curves, big upward or lifting and inspiring. So what's this one? What's this building? The architect was featured in the movie, not for this building, for another building. It's kind of his signature look.
I think his name was like, wasn't it Greg or something like that?
No, Frank Gehry.
Gary.
Yeah, And so where's this building?
It's downtown Chicago.
Downtown Chicago. It's the Pritzker Pavilion, and this is where the free concerts are, and the symphony will sit in here. It's at Millennium Park, yep. And everyone will sit in here, and the musicians will be in here, and then here's everything that you see, and it's got this great canopy over it. So this one's playful, right? I feel like I missed some slides. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the curves. So the curves can be big upward, horizontal, or large downward. Downward is like a frown. It's going to express seriousness. And they can have small curves that are playful. So the other element, the last element is space. Space is what architecture is. We're enclosing space or having space open. We can have constricted space, meaning you're very tight, or we can have expansive space. You can have problems with space, too much space or too little space. So it's really important that people understand how humans react in an area. This is the plan for Unity Temple. So this is Unity Temple, where we saw the interior. And you come up these pathways at the side, and there's a terrace on both sides, identical. So this is symmetrical. It's right, same down the center. And these doors open up, so the outside flows in. And so you've got this big continuous terrace when the people gather for church. And then when you enter, you come this way, the ceiling lowers, and then you come down this way, and you're actually going in the lower level, and you're just peeking at Unity Temple and then looking up. So he plays with space here. And here is the picture of Unity Temple looking. This is the minister's area right here. And you're looking at it from the second balcony. So pattern is another element of design. So patterns can also be called motifs if they're repeated. They can be natural, abstract, geometric, or stylized. So here is a building. Anybody know what this building is? Anybody know what town it's in? Chicago. It's near the zoo. It's right. It's actually in the zoo. It's in Lincoln Park Zoo, and it's the it's pavilion. Oh, what's the name? It's done by Jeannie Gang, who's she's the hot architect in Chicago right now, and it is a honeycomb pavilion. And it's just an open area. They have yoga. You can have a wedding there. You can have receptions there. So that one's using pattern in repeating the honeycomb all around. This one is in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and it's done by an architect named Fay Jones, and he had studied under Frank Lloyd Wright. We got to see this 3 or 4 years ago. Stunningly beautiful church. He uses these repetition of wood to create these cross ties over, and this is up in the middle of the Ozarks, and it's just beyond gorgeous. Then you've got form. Form can be rectangular, angular, or curvilinear, and it relates to human scale. So rectangular forms are easier for furniture and placement. Here's a rectangular form in a building, right? Strong horizontal lines, and it's rectangular. Anybody know what this building is?
Falling water.
Falling water, yep. And we can have angular form. So this is, any chance anybody know what this building is? I'm looking for this one right here, or this one. So this is the Louvre in Paris. It was the King's Palace hundreds of years ago. Yep, Louvre. And years ago, I.M. Pei, a famous architect, a Chinese architect who lived in the United States, was asked to do a new entrance to the Louvre because you used to have to go through these small doors. And so he built this glass pyramid to reflect it, and you enter through here and go down escalators and then enter the Louvre from underground. It's a huge, huge art museum. Very controversial. I have my love-hate relationship with this building. And the other kind of form is curvilinear. And back to the Guggenheim that we talked about earlier, classic curvilinear one. And here's another curvilinear building. This is Jeannie Gang, and if you're at Millennium Park, you can see this. This is office, no, it's hotels and apartments. And she used these great curves. Some of our balconies, some are just decorative. Here's another detail of it up close. So that's the elements of design. Now I'm going to talk about the principles of design. So the principles are scale, proportion, balance, rhythm, and unity. Yeah, Jeannie Gang's done some really cool things with recycled materials, especially early on in her career. She has a new high-rise going up downtown right now that I don't really like at all, but she's very interesting. So these are the principles of design that I want you to talk about with your building. So the first one is scale. Is it human scale or is it not? Here's that picture of that I promised you of the house at the home and studio. And you can see, remember I said that this part right here was only 5 feet high. You can see here's a guy standing. He couldn't see out that window. It's all scaled for a child. Even though it's got this big arch in it, everything's scaled for a child. The seat's low, the windows are low. So this was purposefully done for his children. Here's something that's not scaled to human. So it's not human scale at all. The Great Pyramids of Giza, they were meant to make people feel small and inferior. Just like some of the big banks or some of the big, oh, I'm running over on time. I'm gonna hurry up here. And proportion is how one object relates to another. This is Crown Hall in IIT that Mies van der Rohe did, so it's proportioned to the human scale, but when you get inside, the spaces are bigger. Balance, you can have asymmetrical, symmetrical, or radial. Here's a symmetrically balanced building. This is the Taj Mahal in India, in Agra, India. This is a building in Japan. I don't know where, I just found it. I like the angular forms that it had in it. And then you can have rhythm. Rhythm is repetition. Too much can be lead to monotony. Too little doesn't really create anything, lacks unity. But here's a great one with repetition. We already saw this. This is the Frank Lloyd Wright's Johnson Wax Administration Building. So he uses repetition with the columns. And rhythm. Here's a cathedral in in France. And it's got rhythm with the arches that carry you down through. And then we could have contrasting rhythm. This is somewhere in Germany. I found this picture. I thought it was really interesting. This craggy rock and the castle on top of it. Same materials, right? It's built out of rock, but it's contrasting in its texture. And unity is items together through repetition. So this is in San Francisco, the famous row houses. And so they're unified by all the same color, but the windows are all slightly different, the decoration is slightly different, but it creates this unity, but it's not monotonous because there's some variation in it. The bays are slightly different. Then you can have emphasis. This is the rose window in Chartres Cathedral outside of Paris. And as you enter, this is the focal point. You've got a focal point at that big rose window. And this is the train station in Europe. In the early 1900s, these were where all the money was put into these buildings. And this is the focal point is the big sky and seeing the sky and the big arches. So you're very small in this. This human scale is really tiny, but the focal point is looking up. So that is, in a nutshell, elements and principles